Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Dirty Chai Club. This is episode 2, and we're so grateful that you're here. And thank you for listening through our first episode. I'm Jasmine Patel, and my co-host is also my cousin Tina Patel.
Hi guys, again, thank you so much for joining us here on episode 2. Kind of just wanted to let you guys know, just a recap of what we talked about last time, kind of where we ended, was pretty much talking about our cultures and how nowadays there's so many more people that are inquiring about what we do in our culture on a daily basis and just what our culture is about. And I think it's amazing that more people are wanting to know more about different cultures and immersing themselves in that as well. And talking about that, there are specific rituals and celebrations now that we do with our family that hold special meanings, but they've also evolved over time. So being on that, Jazz, like, how do you feel? I know you're raising a family now. How do you think that plays a role in your family?
So this is something that I have been thinking about since we even got pregnant. And it's just like, how are we going to raise our kids to continue tradition and culture? And this is something that like my dad even said a very long time ago in regards to just like parenting. And it struck me and it stayed with me for until now. And it's like, if you're not passing on your traditions and your cultures to your kids, then he's like, you're not doing it right. You're not parenting right.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, obviously my parents have instilled quite a bit of different culture and tradition, and it's on me to take that and pass that on. And there's certain things and certain aspects of things that I'm like, I'm probably not going to pass that on. And it's just because how you believe and what you believe and like seeing things logically. For example, like I'm not going to pass on superstition to my family. I'm sorry. A black cat crossed the road. It happened, right?
I mean, there's certain superstitions that I one day, God willing, I have a family. I'll be like, nah, I believe in that. Like, but I get
And
it. I get it. There's certain things that you're just like, oh, you can't, sweep the floors at night because you're just sweeping all the way certain things in your family. So I get that. There's certain aspects that are really hard to keep going. But how do you think, culture wise, religion wise, that's going to play a role? I know for me, I'm not as religious, doing the prayers and going to mandir and doing all those things. But I know for you, it's a different aspect. You do take the kids to mandir and stuff like that. So how does that play a role?
well, right now we go to Mandir and we don't listen to Sabah. Like we don't listen to the sermons. We don't listen to the katha that's going on. We're just in survival mode when we go to the Mandir. And it was something that I had to accept like very early on when I started taking the kids. That we're just going to go and we're just going to show up and that's it. Like
Right.
there's really no chance of me listening to anything that's happening on stage when I'm paying attention to my kids and what they're doing, and they're just playing. So right now it's just more of a community center to us, and that's what it should be actually to a lot of families, excuse me. It should be a community center of a place that you're going to go and you're going to make lifelong connections. And we're lucky enough that our mandir has like global reach, and so I know people from like hundreds of mandirs around the country, around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you don't have a mandir or you don't have a place that is of global reach, I think it's important to, whatever you're going to, just going and knowing that those are your long-term connections with people. They're not connections of like, you're going to go to school and you're going to know somebody for 4 years, you're going to graduate. You might not speak to them anymore. Like there is literally, I went to college, I knew like dozens and dozens of people, and I only talked to 3 of them still.
Yeah.
And so like the retention rate of community is really interesting to me. Same thing with like high school. Like there's probably 2 people I kind of am in touch with still. And then same thing goes for workplaces. Like sure, you could be working with somebody for years and years and years, and you're probably not going to stay connected with them because you only have that work connection. And so it's hard to take that community of like where you are with work, where you are with school, and like transform that into a lifelong connection.
Right.
But it's easy to do it when you have a Monday that you're going to every single weekend. And when I realized that was when we had a car accident in like 2008, and the people that showed up were all the people from Armand. And they were people that like I didn't even necessarily speak to.
Yeah.
Like that's the power of the community. So that's what I'm really excited to pass on to my kids. And right now we just go, we're just there, we're just present. And then on a daily basis, as far as ritual goes, like obviously my parents didn't pass down the um, rituals that they grew up with, in a sense that, you know, when mom and dad were like young people in India, they probably went to the mandir every single day. Unknowingly sometimes even. Like they would go to mandir on the way home from school, or they would stop in and do darshan on the way home from work, right?
Hmm.
And that's just like part of that culture and religion in India. It's just normal. There's thousands and thousands of little tiny like mandirs, you know,
Yeah.
like on every street corner there.
Yeah.
And so I think in that sense, it's a little bit different of what we're seeing in America.
Hmm.
And in America, what we have are God mandirs. We all have like a little mandir inside of our home. And that's not, I mean, it's the case in India as well. Everyone has a God mandir in India too. But
Right.
I think it just plays a much more important role in our families in America, because it gives it a little bit more importance, because we're not going to have that daily stop off on the way home.
Right.
And instead, now we have wake up, you shower, you pray, and then you continue your day, you know?
Yeah.
I did not mean to rhyme there, but I did.
I mean, it is different, like you said, you are growing up with parents that didn't pass that on, or we have the theirs. It's funny because, like, obviously, we're not, in my family, yes. Do we believe in God? Do we go to Mandir? Yes, not on a daily basis. For us, it's like we're going to go during those special occasions. Because, again, to my dad, he's like, well, I have a Mandir at home. Like, why am I going to go? With that also being said, do I do darshan at home? No. Does my mom do darshan at home? No. My dad does. Every morning he has his, he does his puja, he does all the prayers and stuff in the family. But it's not something I really, I can't say believed in, but to me, it just wasn't necessary. And I think that's kind of something to point out, where it's like, for you, you're still bringing that culture, you're bringing that tradition. For me, I'm just like, well, it's here. I know it's there. To me, I have a different mindset where like God's there. Like I can talk to
Hmm.
him and be like, hey, what's up? Like this is my situation, or I need help or whatever. Um, I don't go to a spot. I
Hmm.
think anybody that knows me, I'm always like, I believe, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to go to Mandir to believe. And I think that's the difference in like how things are evolving. You're still holding on to like some of those cultures, which is amazing. It's nor here or there. Where I think for me, it's the opposite side, where yes, I am in this generation of evolving, where I don't need to go to those things. I think the same can go for like, even when it comes to like Diwali or certain celebrations that we have in our culture, where it's just progressing into a different style. For Diwali, it was like we all get together and we make meals and we have celebrations, and now it's kind of there. Like I still have it with a lot of my family members, but it's not as hi-fi as I remember when we were growing up, when Diwali was celebrated. And when you go to the mandir, again, that's the time I go to the mandir, is Diwali and New Year's. Um, but I think in just simple terms, even just weddings, I think about right now, if we had a wedding, our moms, their moms, their elders are going to know exactly what has to be done during a traditional Indian wedding. It's like, this puja has to get done. You have to do these certain requirements for the wedding to even take place. And again, mind you guys, for anyone hearing, our weddings are a couple of days. For people that don't know, Indian weddings last a few days. There's multiple rituals, there's multiple things going on. So in that, it's like the family that pretty much guides us, our elders guide us. And I was telling my friend, I was like, you know, for my nephew, again, your kids as well, we'll probably have us barely making it by us to, you know, if we, God willing, like our parents are still around, um, they might help us and say, like, hey, this is what we had to do, this is what has to get done. But I'm like, what about for my kids? Like, who are they going to have? You know, and it's crazy to think like 2 generations from now, they might not be following those practices because who's going to be there to instill that in them as well? Who's going to be there to guide, like, this is the proper wedding process and what's going on, and then see what happens from there? I don't know. It's just, it's interesting to see what's going to be evolving over this time and what might be happening. So
So
I
I
think,
think that like that's part of our legacy and our impact. And that was like something that I've been thinking about for a while, but more so when Bob passed away last year. And it
mhm,
was like, what is a legacy and impact when somebody passes away? Like, we're going to remember Ba, but my kids never, unfortunately, got to meet her,
mhm,
and they're not going to remember her. But what they can remember are things that she has passed down. So it's on my mom to pass those things on to me that she learned from her mom, and then it's on me to pass those things on to my daughter and my son. And so I think that rituals and traditions, they can get passed down, and it's just individual responsibility to pass those down.
mhm.
Um, like yesterday, I was almost like tearing up at the end of Aarti because like I think it's funny. Like my husband and I laugh about it every single day, but like as soon as like the gantari goes off, like the bell for Aarti,
Uh-huh.
and the kids are in the living room, they'll like perk up and they'll like waddle over into the mandir, and I'm like, we did that. We did it. We like brought that culture and brought that to them. And it's just a tiny little step like that, just seeing the excitement on their face for it.
Yeah.
And they go in and then they like just perk up right against the mandir like this with their little heads, and then they try to reach for the gantari out of Minesh's hand, and like they try to like ring it and they're not successful, and they'll come over and clap, and they'll just be playing in there while we're doing Aarti. And at the end of it, as soon as it ends, it goes on, and they know that it's over though, but so they go over to Minesh and they try to like take the Aarti from the Aarti. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, we did it at 15 months,
yeah.
you know? And
The
so
phases, yeah. And
I
everything.
was so excited about that when I saw that yesterday. And it just like the realization of like knowing that it's doable,
Mhm.
and it's just a tiny little win in that bigger picture of what is the impact and legacy that we're going to leave, especially when it comes to like culture and tradition.
Yeah.
And it's just a tiny little thing. Like doing Aarti is just the one thing that we do as a family that is traditional and cultural, and we try to do it every single day. And if we miss it, we're not down on ourselves, and we're not like feeling guilty or bad or anything. It's just something that I find has been like keeping us centered toward our culture and our religion. And I was telling Minish this morning or like earlier today, I was like, I'm just thinking, like, what if we were able to wake up earlier and just get all the things done so that way we could do it in the morning as well with them?
Right.
Because it's only a once a day thing. And obviously, we want to teach them more, and we want to be involved as well more and more because we want them to be raised in a space that is like accepting of both cultures, like American culture and Western culture, and just that it's a very fine balance. But we also want them to be cognizant of the fact that it's not necessarily doable every single day.
Right.
And you are going to have days that you can't possibly do all the things, and that it's okay in that space if you can't.
Yeah.
Um versus how sometimes I feel like when we grew up it was like you have to do it, period.
Yeah. It was like that peer pressure. I was like, you want me to do it? I'm not going to do it. Me
Yeah.
being me, the rebel, like it was
Yeah.
just like, I'm not going to do it. You know, and and it's commending, you know, and I think that's where you're right. It's the legacy that we want to leave. And whatever legacy we leave, we have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
It has to be accepting. It can't be out of like peer pressure that,
Yeah.
or, norms, or just like, this is what you have to do. Every family does it. And this is what you have to bring down from generation to
Yeah.
generation, and I think that makes a difference in actually the way the kids take it, as opposed to being like, I have to do this. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Don't know the purpose behind it. And then growing up and being like, well, I don't care for it,
Yeah.
and I think that makes a huge difference of just teaching the kids of what the importance is. And hey, this could be a fun thing. This could be enjoyable. And
Hmm.
they see it from that perspective, that it's something that they're going to want to continue.
Yeah. Like we
Yeah.
literally at first we would like bring them into the room,
Hmm.
and then now it's like we don't even tell them it's happening, and sometimes they'll just like go end up there before we even start, and sometimes we start and they'll just end up there, but it's not like you have to be here and you have to
Yeah.
sit down and you have to like sit quietly. We just let them play in there, like,
Yeah.
and make it fun for them.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, just enjoy it. And I think that's something that was missing from past practices, is like the enjoyment of it. And
Hmm.
that enjoyment got lost over time and over probably generations and generations. And because that enjoyment got lost, the things stopped getting passed down.
Yeah. How do you think technology and social media has influenced our culture and our traditions, like the way things are practiced and shared today? Like, how does that play a role in, I guess, our life and just South Asian culture in itself?
I think anything social media, like anything you see on social media, personally to me, it just makes it cooler. For
Fair.
lack of a
I get
better
that. Yeah.
word,
Yeah.
it just makes it cooler, because you see other people doing the cultural things and the traditional things.
Right.
And I think even in India, there's a huge resurgence of like getting back to the roots and getting back to the culture and getting back to the reasons why we're doing things. And so, our, I want to say our age and like anybody, younger than us are going to ask the questions why.
Yeah.
Why are we doing arti? Well, you do arti because, you have to do like back in the day, like you took a light to the idol of Bhagwan, and that's how you could even see them, and then you're praising them every single day during that arti, right? So, um just knowing the whys, and then the other part is like making it fun and enjoyable.
Hmm.
And so once you see that, and if it's on social media and you see somebody pointing out the why of like, why is this like this, or why do we celebrate um like Diwali, or why do we celebrate Holi, or why do we celebrate, like, what is the core purpose behind these celebrations or behind the rituals?
Hmm.
Then somebody is, I'm personally, that's how I am. Like, I'm more likely to. So I have this conversation and like this argument with my parents sometimes, and it's like, especially around parenting things, right? So it's like, um, they'll say dumb things. Excuse my language, but they'll say dumb things. Um, things like, especially with having to do with the kids, like, I can't even give you an example right now, but like socks on kids. Where is the research for socks on kids? What is the logic behind socks on kids or hats on kids or swaddling kids, right? So for me, I'm like research based
Yeah.
and logic based on everything, including any parenting things, including cultural things, traditional things. Like, if it's not outlined logically, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of it is like what you're saying, when we're looking at things in social media, just for example, Holy, I have friends that reach out, they're like, oh, that's the day you throw the color. Like, that's so much fun. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, it's fun. But like, do you know the reasoning behind it? And
Mhm.
the same thing they've asked for the Diwali, like when we're doing Diwali and they're like, oh, why are you putting out all these candles? And, I saw a picture of like in India what Diwali looks like, and there's all these lights and this and that. And I'm like, but did anybody do the research? And don't get me wrong, like I'm not one to be like, I know exactly what this means and you were wrong. No, it took me doing research in my own culture of knowing like what it is and the meaning behind what we're doing. But I think
Mhm.
as we grow older and as people again are becoming more curious about our culture, I think it's there's a good side to it that people are seeing us posting pictures and seeing what we do to celebrate our culture, and that makes it more unique in a way to them.
Cool.
And
Makes it
cool.
cool.
Makes it cool, and they're like, I want to be cool, like I want to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I like that, where I had someone reach out and be like, oh, what's the point of Diwali? And I said, why don't you look it up? Like, why do we light all these candles? Like,
Yeah.
you tell me. Um, and when they came back, I was like, you know what? See, like, you'll learn something. And they're like, I had no idea. Like, this is such a cool meaning, you know?
Hmm.
And I think that's where it's like, yeah, post it on social media. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, you don't need to post everything. And I'm like, I get that. But at the same time, I see it from the more we post it, the more people are becoming aware of not just our culture, but like other cultures and traditions that they have. And it makes you want to learn. So what's the harm?
Yeah.
You're learning something new. And I think that's like an amazing factor of just more people becoming diverse in a way,
Hmm.
especially when we're trying to promote diversity, and whether it be a workplace, whether it be at home, it's just a way to reach more people in my eyes.
Yeah. I like the accounts of like sanskar teaching, for example, or simply laddus because they do go into the background of certain things and then like how to teach them as well.
Yeah.
So just a quick couple shout outs to those people. Um, but yeah, I think it's definitely going to have an impact on future generations,
Hmm.
like the social media aspect of it and what people are seeing on it and what's being shared. But again, it's there's also a difference in like, oh, how it's put out.
Yeah.
So not being forceful to the kids, but teaching it from that logic and uh, fun aspect because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a way of life. It's not supposed to be like forced on you.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's supposed to be like a natural way of life, like with what you're doing with your life, you know? And if
Yeah.
you feel like there's something that's missing or that component is missing, then you can do more things. And if you feel like there's a component that's like just too much for you, then you don't have to do those things to be considered, religious or cultural. And I like that you pray outside of going to the mandir because that's another thing. Like our religion believes that God is everywhere in everything. And
Hmm.
so you don't need to go to an actual like space to say a prayer.
Hmm.
So I think that's important to know and acknowledge and not feel bad about ever because there's been so many ups and downs in my life where you know, I've gone more and there's been other times where I've like gone less. And at the end of the day, it's just believing and knowing and doing the right thing and knowing that whatever you're doing, God is watching no matter where you are. And
Yeah.
so like stop at the stop sign. Like don't do horrible things to to people. It doesn't matter who that person is. Like you just don't do horrible things and you don't have horrible intentions. So I think, how do you think people will play a role in promoting that understanding and fostering more acceptance of like within the South Asian community when it comes to the different interpretations and of like tradition versus modern?
Um, that's kind of hard because I feel like we kind of touched base on it. It's the way people perceive it, right? It's the way you were raised. It's the way people are perceiving it. Um, Again, like if it comes from someone like me, it would the way I interpret it, the way I want to bring it into our life is very different than someone who is more religion based and focused on certain things, right? So I feel like as we're growing older, and especially as we're raising families and in our culture, it really just comes down to like, what do you want to bring forward? What did you learn? What did you value that you want to bring forward? Because again, like we said, there's certain things our parents did that I'm like, I'm not going to bring that forward. Like, I don't want my kids to learn it. But then there are certain things where I'm like, I believe in this superstition, or I believe certain things that they did teach me, especially when it comes to like respecting your elders. There's certain things where I see people and I'm just like, oh, I don't care if I don't know the person, but like I still would not talk this way to the person if they're elder, you know. And I think a key example is how we, you know, just in the simple things of like, for us, everyone, I don't care if you're John Schmo on the street, it's like they're an auntie or they're an uncle. When you introduce them, it's like, oh, this is like Paul on uncle, you know, and we always have that just as a sign of respect, you know, even if like we have our neighbors and they're auntie and uncle, they're not Indian, but they're auntie and uncle. And I think as we become more modern, you know, it's one of the things that I want to bring it along. And at least I try to tell into the family that we have, the kids that I consider mine, you know, and say like, no, as respect, these people are your aunties, these people are your uncles. Um, and I will want certain things like that to continue. Just respecting your elders, just plain and simple, you know, knowing that no matter how frustrated you might get, like, are you going to yell at them? No. There's times, of course, but like, am I going to be cursing in front of my parents and being like, F you, bum, bum, bum? No, absolutely not. Like, um, and those are certain simple, but certain small things that I definitely just want to like bring forward for them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our rule in the house growing up was if they have gray hair, you bugger leg them. Which got complicated pretty quickly because then it's like, well, there's people that are really young that have gray hair that you should still bugger leg, and then it just got really complicated. Like that, like so again, it goes back to the why and like the way that that intentionality is set, and like the way that the respect is set. So if like Rian came up to you and was like, Mussy, why do I have to like listen to you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just that they're older. It's not
Yeah.
just that. But the fact is like they are wiser, they're experienced,
Hmm.
and that's why we should offer them the respect that they deserve. And then so kind of along that same lines, do you think or how do you think that the education system in America is addressing the importance of like cultural heritage when it comes to like individuals in modern society?
Um, you know, I had a totally different, had you asked me like prior to this weekend, I would have had a very different answer for you. But I have a group of girls I hang out with on a monthly basis. Like you said, it's like, you know, that core group that you know are going to be a ride and die, right? We meet up, we talk about things. Some of them have kids, married, whatever. And I was talking to one of my girlfriends, and she was telling me how at their school they are suggesting that he learn English as his first language. He should not be speaking Gujarati as he would like a second language. Should not be his first language, um, just so he can be more acclimated growing up with the kids in school and all of that. So they're like, let him learn the English language, and then yes, start promoting that second language at home. Where we started with Gujarati, learning that first, you know, at home, and that was like important. But I know even back in the days, it was like an issue of us knowing Gujarati. We knew how to speak that even before we knew English. So it was like, oh, you guys need to take like ASL and like all that kind of stuff. But to know that even now, when you have so many diverse cultures, so many cultures coming together, like ethnic backgrounds coming together, and saying that no, English should be your first language, teach that first, and then go ahead and teach your kids your second language. I thought that was baffling. Like when she told me, I was like, excuse me, what? Like, I was like, are you going to follow this? And they're like, absolutely not. Like, we've already started teaching him Gujarati. Like, we've taught our kids that. So, yes, it's not that we're saying you have to speak Gujarati and don't speak English. It's just hand in hand. You're learning both. Um, and kind of what I told them, I was like, you know, it's crazy that the school is not promoting that or promoting the fact that, like, hey, look at him, he's bilingual. He's 8 and he's bilingual. Like,
Yeah.
I talk about Rian, you know, just in himself. We taught him Gujarati. He knows how to speak Gujarati. He understands it way more than he can speak it. But if you ask him to speak it, he knows. Um, and now, because I, of course, watch the Hindi soap opera, he picks
Uh,
up on shows. And before, our code language would be in Hindi. Like if we wanted to say something that we didn't want him knowing about, we would speak in Hindi. Now he's learning Hindi. So I'm like, why wouldn't you promote the fact that this kid not only knows English, he's learning Gujarati and he's learning Hindi, and he's all but 11,
mm-hmm.
you know? And I'm like, that should be like taught upon and told like, hey, yeah, other kids can learn Chinese or they can, you know, speak Mandarin, like whatever. Like
Mhm.
let them speak their mother tongue because if anything, that's going to be promoting diversity as well. Um, so I just find that mind boggling where I'm just like, why would you hold that kid back from being more diverse in that sense?
Mhm.
It's crazy.
That's really interesting that you said that about school. Because I think it's going to depend school to school
Yeah.
and even like person to person. So we actually saw our pediatrician yesterday because of the twins' 15-month checkup. And
Mhm.
so we brought up the whole speech thing because he was like, oh, are they saying mama dada yet? And I'm like, no, they're not. But they came home saying hi the other day. And they'll say mum mum, which is food. We call food mum mum. It's
Uh-huh.
just a slang that we, I think, culturally use for our kids, right?
Right.
And so when Shanti's hungry, she'll just walk around in circles saying mum 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 because, and then you know she's hungry.
Yeah.
Um, and so we asked him about the whole bilingual and English and Gujarati situation, and he was like, you know, honestly, people aren't and kids aren't given enough credit for knowing both. And some of the words that they know, they will still associate with the correct item or whatever, but
Hmm.
they'll be in a different language. And he's like, who cares? It's a word. A word is a word.
Yeah.
And so he's like, it doesn't matter like which language they're learning first, and it doesn't matter that they are learning two languages at one time. It just, some of the words they will learn in one language versus the other language, and it just goes towards their the total amount of language and vocabulary that they build.
Yeah.
So it's
If you
interesting
were
that you said
told,
that. Yeah, so I think that's interesting with like a doctor and how a doctor is perceiving milestones and language versus how somebody who's like an educative administrator is perceiving these things, right?
yeah. What if you were told at school, like with the twins? What would your reaction be?
I would probably
I
give him
know
the
they're young right now.
finger and say I'm taking my kid out of school. No, I'm just kidding.
Goodbye.
No, yeah, not that, not both fingers, just one. Uh, no, I wouldn't say that. I would probably keep them in school, obviously.
Yeah.
Education is important. But we have experience of how language works. We were born in America. And we know both. We know three languages, even we know Hindi, right? But it goes down to what people have experienced versus not experienced. And I guarantee you that that educator doesn't understand being bilingual.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard decision and it's something to think about
Do
even
you feel
now.
like how, I mean, just going back to how you were raised, like knowing both, right? And the question was assimilation.
Mhm.
And if your friend's child learned English first, they would be more assimilated.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you weren't assimilated into Western culture by knowing
No,
Gujarati first?
absolutely not. And again, for me, I feel like it was different because I grew up, even though Gujarati was my first language, my neighbors were all different races.
Hmm.
I had that diversity growing up. So to me, I'd never like associate myself with like I'm Indian. Like that was never something that was thought in my mind, right? Because I did the same things they did. I ate the same things they did, um, whether my parents approved or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like I did all those things. So to me, it never changed the fact that like, oh, because I know Gujarati first, that I'm any less better than them learning English first. Because again, we learned it like when we learned it, at least when I learned it, it was side by side, English and Gujarati. It wasn't like you learn this first, then you learn that. We learned it at the same time, the same way the twins are learning. My mom or hey, they're learning those.
Hi.
They're learning all of it together, and I think that's the difference. It's not where it's like you only have to learn, Spanish first, and that's what you have. I think if anything, that helped me growing up, because now someone asks me like, how many languages do you speak? Yeah, I'm fluent in Gujarati. I can speak Hindi. I can get by. I can understand somewhat Punjabi. And same thing with Spanish. I can understand Spanish. I can't respond to you so much in Spanish, but I can get by. I used to do a lot of my work in Spanish, right? So if anything, I feel like that helped me. Like it's like I did not just learn one language, I learned multiple language because I had that opportunity. So if my parents had to go back and be like, did that change my kid's life growing up? To me, not really. I didn't feel like it did. I think if anything, it helped me. I never saw a difference. It's just wild to me that, you know, this is not the first time I've heard it where when my friends have told me that this is what's being told about their kids, like, no, you need to speak more English in the household. And I'm like, why? They speak perfectly fine English. Um, but it's just hearing that more often is where it baffles me. And I'm like, okay, like, is that really like, what's the problem at the end of the day? If they're learning both, I would understand if you put them in school and they don't know English and all they're doing is speaking like in Gujarati or they're speaking in Chinese or like Mandarin, sorry, whatever. They're speaking only Spanish and that's a problem. Fine. They're not picking up that English language. I see that as a problem only because, yes, you're not able to learn and you're not able to pick up things, right, in school that you should be. So I
And
see
it's
it
only a
when it
problem
becomes a
because they're
problem.
living in an English speaking country. It wouldn't
Correct.
be a problem if, like, they're not heathens. Like, if
Correct.
they're in their own country, they're not heathens.
Correct. If anything, they'd be like, well, why don't you know our language, right? So it's like, it's coming here where it's like, why is that a problem? Unless it's affecting your education, fine. I see it in that sense where it's like, how about you pull back and let's start focusing on English because all their materials are going to be in English. Fine. I get that if it was a problem. But when I don't see it as a problem and I don't see that the kids are being held back because of the fact that they're learning two languages, that's what blows my mind. And I'm like, try to explain that to me. And again, I'm not a parent. I have tons of nieces and nephews. So to me, it's like parent byproduct. But like, I see that and I'm like, no, that's not okay. And I'm like, what are you guys doing about it as a parent? Like, how are
I
you
mean,
guys feeling? Because I have strong feelings.
if an administrator told me that, I would continue in the ways I'm going
Uh-huh.
and just enforce the fact of making sure my child is speaking English in school. Like, we were told when we're out in public, do not speak Gujarati because
Hmm.
people around you feel bad.
Yeah.
So if my kid is in the school with another Gujarati kid and they start speaking Gujarati with each other, that's not okay to me
Hmm.
because that could mean it's disrespectful for the people around them
Yeah.
and the people around them. When we owned Chandler and I was the manager there every single day, that was our rule. You can't speak in Vietnamese to each other
Yeah.
unless there's no customers inside the building. Then you can speak. I don't care. You can say anything about me. I would not know, whatever. But the fact of the matter was, I don't want clients and customers to feel like you are talking about them, even if you're not.
I
You're
think
not
that's
talking about
amazing
them.
because every time I go get my nails did or anything, I'm like, what are they saying?
And I
So
get it. It's
I
more
think,
comfortable to speak in your native language sometimes,
right,
but it's just knowing and that awareness of where you are and the awareness of um,
your surroundings, basically.
surroundings and being respectful to other people
Yeah.
and having that mutual respect. So I think as you look forward, what do you think, what changes or adaptations do you hope to see in the way that South Asian communities are balancing their tradition and like modernness?
Looking forward, I think there's a lot, where I would hope that I see changes in, not just in one aspect where thought process, the way we think about a woman's role, the way we think about a man's role. I would say culturally, right? Also, mental health, lifestyle, looks. Yeah, there's so much that I can talk about. Like that's going to be a whole another session. But I think all of those aspects are very important. Where I feel like we kind of have to get out of that old mindset, where we thought you had to stay married in an unhappy relationship for the kids and that's just the way it was because what are people going to say? Or, you know what? You can't go outside and play in the sun because you're going to get super dark. And then is anyone going to want that as a future partner? I remember being told
That
that all
always
the time.
confuses me. Like, who set the bar on like light skin being the standard for beauty? Who done it?
I have no idea. And it's crazy because even in India now, it's still, it's not as, of course, me being here, I don't see it as much, but I know it still happens so much in India where it's like, oh, look at this fair and lovely. And I'm like, are you fair and lovely? Like, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. You are lovely whether you're lovely or not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're dark skinned or not. And I think that those ideas, those thoughts that were back in the day need to go in like a garbage bin and cost,
Yeah.
and I can say that a lot because when I even think about my parents, the way they raised me and the way their thoughts were, even hell, 10 years ago, um, I knew what they thought. I knew how they felt. And knowing, to me, it makes me proud to know that they're growing, they're evolving at this age, mostly because of the situations that they've been put in, but they're learning. And I think that's where a lot of parents in our generation have to learn, things that were okay 20 plus years ago are not okay anymore. You don't have to stay unhappy. You don't need to not talk about mental health. I think it's great that there's so many more people talking about it. And I think it's important, people talking about their mental health and how it affects their lives. Even when it comes to like postpartum, people talking about that and how it affects their lives in South Asian community, because to them it's like, no, you pop out a baby and you should be like up and running and running a marathon. It's like, no, that's not the case. And that's never been the case. Yes, we have an army behind us. Some people do, some people don't, but it's
Thank you for
definitely
being
not
my
the
army.
case. You're so welcome.
Commander in chief of the army.
But like it takes a village, right? Even when it comes to that. But I think those are the aspects where I feel like changes need to happen, and I think that's one of the reasons why for this podcast, when you had told me about it, I was like, I want to see changes, especially in those areas happen. That's why I had said yes, because I'm like, yes, I want to talk about it. Like, let's talk about it, because I've hit a lot of those milestones where I'm like,
There's so many things that
so many.
definitely need change and adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even tradition and modernness. It's just a balance behind, well, what we were told versus what is actually logical and what is going to impact our mental health.
Right.
And I think that mental health aspect that you said, it makes a huge difference in how we're continuing any of the traditions moving
Yeah.
forward. Like there's so many things that we can talk about right now, but we're
I
going to
know.
cut it there. We're going to talk about some of those things in our future podcast
Yes.
episodes of Dirty Chai Club. So thank you for listening to us ramble on for the last 45 minutes
Oh wow.
about, I know we went long. We attempt to cut them at 20 minutes, but we were just engrossed
So
in
fast.
conversation that we cannot stop. But we will touch on some of those things
Yes.
about things that are needing change and the things that traditional sense cannot continue forward
Mm-hmm. But thank
in
you
next
guys.
episodes.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in for episode 2, and then definitely please check us out for episode 3. Let
Yeah.
us know. Give us your feedback.
Subscribe.
Thank you guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.